And if somebody has a stronger personality than others, then they sometimes will kind of impose themselves. And so we don't want that, because then it creates not a peace around this. And that's really what we're looking to do, is we want your marriage from a financial perspective to have peace, where you both can feel like this isn't stressful. It's often the little things, small behaviors, that can change our lives. That's the power of a financial edge. I'm Ed Meek. I'm a financial advisor with a passion to help you retire early, save more, and live better. Welcome to Ed's Edge, the podcast to help you live the life you've always wanted. If we surveyed spouses, most would say that they're not on the same page when it comes to money a little bit, and still a lot would say that it's a bit of a problem.
They're far apart.
Yeah, exactly. The goal of this podcast is for us to help people get on the same page, get closer when it comes to discussing finances, spending, planning, investing, everything. And we both know, not like personally, a little bit personally, I think, but we both know by just talking to people that that's not the case a lot. And so our goal is to help you with this. I do want to put a placeholder right now just for later on. There's a bonus piece to this that if you wait to the end, I'm going to share something that I think, I came across recently, you don't even know about right now, that I'm going to share in the end. So
cliffhanger.
Yeah,
all right.
That's right.
Love it. Well, it's a new year. That's why we wanted to talk about this topic is setting yourself up for success with your spouse. And it starts really with, before we get into the numbers that we talked plenty of episodes about, let's talk a little bit about mindset and why people aren't on the same page with their spouse.
Communicating with your spouse about money, as I mentioned, it really, the reason why is because there's a lot of anxiety around it. People look at money differently. They come from different places when it comes to money. And, growing up, my wife and I came from very different places. Her parents did a little bit better financially than my parents. My parents were never taught about money themselves. And so therefore they just kind of got by and were able to. And so it taught me certain things to be a certain way. And then her parents handled money in a different way. It wasn't right or wrong. It was just different. Mm-hmm. And that's the case for all of us.
That is. Yeah. The way we think about money today, the first thing Ed and I have realized over our meeting with so many clients is how you grew up with money ties to what you think about it now and how you view it. And so we want to tap into that first and foremost.
Understanding your spouse's point of view when it comes to money is key, but it's also super important to do it without judgment.
Yeah. So if we're going to categorize this into steps with getting on the same page as your spouse, let's start there. So step number one is having a conversation with your spouse around how you grew up with money. And as Ed had just mentioned, you want to make sure that you listen, take yourself out of your shoes and put yourself in theirs. I know it's hard to do sometimes, but put yourself in their shoes and ask lots of questions. So what type of questions can you ask your spouse about how you grew up? It's a simple question first and foremost is, when did you first learn about money? How did you view money when you were in your teens, adolescence, when you're starting to learn these things, right? When you got money, what did your family do with it? Did they talk about it? Did they ignore it? Did all these components to help you view what shapes them, and that will help create the awareness on where your spouse is coming from with money. So that's step number one.
The second thing would be, what comes to my mind is freedom. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because I recently have been reading a book with my wife and some other couples. And it's a book called Making Sense of God by Tim Keller. But this idea of freedom, I thought actually applied to us. We could apply it to what we're talking about when it comes to money. And so I'm reading just a quote from the book. It says, "The modern definition of freedom is the ability to do whatever you want. However, how does that definition work when your wants are in conflict with each other?"
Yeah.
And so this is what happens in all marriages. And it's not a bad thing. It's just
It's reality.
It's reality, right?
That's right. Yeah.
There's no such thing as ultimate freedom in everything because, one story he had in there was there's a grandfather, and the grandfather loves two things. And these two things are, number one, he loves to eat great food that isn't always healthy for him. He also loves to spend really good quality time playing with his granddaughter. If he ate all the food he wanted to, got overweight, become unhealthy, he wouldn't be able to spend that time with his granddaughter. And so he's going to have to give up or compromise some of these freedoms. And so that is analogous to money and being married and having to give up something for each other.
Yeah, it reminds me of something my wife and I did several years ago, and we certainly want to revisit frequently this topic around goal setting, value setting, and trying to get on that same page with those items before we get on the same page with our money. Everyone can picture the Venn diagram, right? We've heard of those Venn diagrams and that where they overlap. Well, what my wife and I did is
usually just nerdy people like you.
Yeah, probably.
No, Scott, do you know what the Venn diagram is? Scott says he doesn't know.
He's nodding because he has to nod.
And I rember it from college. That's about it. So keep
going. We'll put a picture up of a Venn diagram just in case. But what my wife and I did is we looked at our individual goals separately. We did not talk to each other about this. We wrote down our individual goals. What did we want to accomplish in the short, in the intermediate, and the long term? Long term, certainly some retirement components, but what does retirement look like? Intermediate term is if all goes well, what do we want to be able to do? One of my items is to be able to buy a condo in South Carolina. And then we have short-term goals, things, upgrades for the house, potentially vacations we want to do, things of that nature. And so long story short, my wife and I did this individually before we got together, and then we compared notes on our goals. And back to that Venn diagram, we found some common goals that each of us had written down together. And those are the ones that we can attack quite easily because we are on the same page.
Like
right?
What were a couple of examples?
A couple examples. So vacationing is very important for us, of having nice vacations. Now, not extravagant, but nice vacations annually with our son. We have had no challenge of accomplishing that since we've done that.
I know you're taking a lot of vacation days. No, I'm kidding.
Another goal is that condo I talked about. Both of us want to have a place down south at some point in the 10-year future, we'll call it. And so we're striving for that. And so those middle goals that you and your spouse have together, those are going to be the easy ones. What's going to be the hard ones are the ones that you have different. And I'll give an example personally of ours is I grew up in a basement in a nutshell. I always had friends over in a basement, and I just love hanging out in basements.
I mean, you weren't like there all the time, were you? You grew up in a basement, and did they ever let you out?
I slept in my bed and I hung out in my basement. They
didn't let you out, huh?
Well, I didn't want to get let out, so I was enjoying life down there. And so, we have an unfinished basement right now. And I want to finish it for myself and my son. I'm gonna add him into the equation, so I don't feel so selfish about it.
He'll probably like the basement.
I'd hope so.
Just don't keep him down there all the time.
Okay, fair enough. And so that's an important item for me. That was nowhere on her list, and so we had to work through that.
Yeah.
Right. And so same concept for you as if you're doing this exercise, which I highly, highly encourage, is you got the ones in the middle that you'll be on the same page. You're going to need to talk through the ones on the left, and there's some push-pull relationships, some compromises.
Right. And this is what causes the strain oftentimes, right, in the relationship. We know what the common ones are. The uncommon ones is where we have to work through this. And if somebody has a stronger personality than others, then they sometimes will kind of impose themselves. And so we don't want that, because then it creates not a peace around this. And that's really what we're looking to do, is we want your marriage from a financial perspective, I mean, in all perspectives, but especially a financial perspective, to have peace where you both can feel like this isn't stressful. And that's not an easy thing, but some of these steps, initially really, really do get you to that point. I mean, and this comes to the spending. It's not just the spending, but it comes to investing. It comes to like retirement. Like my wife, she wants to retire and recently has retired, or possibly earlier than me. I love helping people like you, and that I get super excited about it. I want to do this for a really long time. And she has goals of what would she like to do eventually when it comes to traveling and retirement for us together. And so we have to kind of figure out, how can we balance this, because it's different. What she desires exactly is a little bit different, and that's okay. But we have to take these different steps, right? And be flexible with each other.
Yeah, flexible is important. I couldn't agree more. And we see this certainly with ourselves individually, with our own money, but with clients too. There's 3 categories that most of us fall into, if not all of us fall into, when it comes to what would we do with our money within our goals. One of them is the natural tendency is to save it. One of them is a natural tendency is to give it to others. And the other one's natural tendency is to spend it. And all of them have their pros and cons. We are who we are. And my wife and I are different. I'm a saver, she's a spender, right? If I had
Theo's the giver?
Theo he'll probably be the giver. He's a pretty good.
We got to have him set up a charitable gift fund then.
Yeah, we got to get on that, buddy. And so if it was only up to me, we wouldn't have the house we have today, which I'm so grateful for. If it was only up to her, we wouldn't have the retirement.
Yeah, I know this. We're the same way. I know.
Yeah, so this flexibility is so key. And I know it's a buzzword, but compromise. You're not going to be able to get everything you want, and that's a good thing when you're with your spouse.
Yeah. Let's say you're still with us here, and you're like, okay, we know that this is a good idea.
Yeah.
The next step is the most important step, and that is, if you're saying that and you haven't done this on your own, you have to ask yourselves, are you going to be able to do this on your own? And if so, then great. If not, it reminds me of a story recently just about me. So I went and had my physical like earlier this week. Fortunately,
He's still here?
I'm still here. Things are looking good. I've always been one who exercises. I've lost some weight throughout the year, doing good. I think I eat healthier than I used to. So I'm checking some boxes, but there's one thing that I have yet to do because it just doesn't seem very attractive to me. It's kind of like this. Like, this seems kind of hard.
It's not motivating, right?
I'm 55. I've been hearing for at least 5 to 10 years that I need to do strength training. It's even more important than cardio for someone like me, because as I get older, if I lose my strength, then it's not a good thing. So my son graduated from college recently, still lives with us. He's super disciplined when it comes to this. 6 days a week, he works out. He loves it. It's a great, great thing for him. Me, not attractive. So I said to him actually last night, I said, Nathan, I'd like to hire you as my trainer. And he looked at me and I'm like, I'll pay you. He said, Dad, you don't have to pay me. I'll help you. So,
and why did you want him to help you?
Because I'm not going to do it on my own. I haven't. I've been thinking about this for years, right? That's exactly right. I'm not going to do it. I might do it on my own, but I keep thinking about it. And so I know a lot of successful people have coaches and trainers and financial planners and programs. If you want to get better at something, you need sometimes to get outside help. So I encourage you, I implore you, if you're not going to do it on your own, that is the most important thing when it comes to this. Because if you find a professional or someone, they're going to help you go through a lot of this stuff.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Coaches have such powerful roles when it comes to these things. So,
and we've talked about that before regarding your finances, but specifically when it comes to talking about the money, that's a big one.
Opening up about how you approach it. Yep, exactly.
So if you do these things with your spouses, you're not going to struggle. I mean, this could be an aha for you. That's the hope, is that if it is, like, we have seen this happen in people's lives and it changes everything. I mean, it helps marriages because this can be such a big strain. And so really, really encourage you to look into this.
Yeah. Terrific. Well, we wanted to start off the new year with getting you on the same page and having you think about some of these topics and being honest with yourself about it. So with all that said, let's shift over.
Remember, there was a bonus issue.
Oh, I thought we were going to do Ed's Food for Thought first.
No, but remember, I said there was something that you don't even know about.
I'm ready.
Okay. So we have Cecile, who works here at the office. She is an expert at helping people, unfortunately, go through divorces. Mm-hmm. So I went to her and I said, Cecile, if there's one thing that you want to help people, like hopefully not when they get to you when you're going through a divorce, but help people, because she knows that money is like a huge issue when it comes to being married. What's one thing you would say to these people? And I'm going to read the quote because
from her.
Yeah.
Got it.
All couples have division of labor when it comes to what they do. You know, for example, some people will do certain things around the house and some people will do other things around the house.
I'm outside, she's inside.
Right, whatever. And one of them is money. Mm-hmm. Usually there's a default. So she says, this is what they bring to the table. When it comes to finances and investing and spending, one of them usually does it all or does most of it. Right? I mean, we see this. We know it in our marriages. I think, you know, because we're in this field, you tend to be that in your marriage. I tend to be that in my marriage. And I've told stories about how, you know, I've tried to bring my wife up to speed. And then she says, that's fine, but, and this is a big but. She didn't say that. That's what I'm saying. The other spouse needs to have a handle on what's going on. So, unquote. So, you know, they need to know, you know, where is all the money at? Where is it going? How much is being invested? Where is it being spent? I mean, some spouses, as we see, like I see this, I have this couple, and the husband literally is the breadwinner, does really, really well. And he doesn't even want to know. And I keep saying, hey, once in a while, you got to come. We need to let you know what's going on. It's just super important because it just helps. She said, quote, trust and verify. Like, you're going to have a great, great marriage, but you just need to be able to trust them. That'd be good. But just verify so you know what's going on.
Yeah, I think that's powerful. You know, creating the awareness around what have we built up to. Mm-hmm. So and you can celebrate some of those successes too along the way, see that progress. So great bonus call. Thanks, Cecile, for that. Much appreciated. Let's shift over to Ed's Food for Thought.
All right. Well, part of this is going to be a little bit of an inquiry with you. This is
I don't know if I'm going to pass the test.
Half like helpful thing when it comes to food. So it's not really it's not a recipe, but kind of like when I was talking about the hamburgers, you know, thing and cooking in the summer. And the other half is a restaurant that I went to recently. So are you familiar with dry aging steak? Are you familiar with this?
Familiar, yes.
Do you know what the gist is of dry aging steak?
How they create it to be that way?
Yeah. So it's steakhouses generally will do this, right? It involves when steakhouses do this, what they do is they do this for a period of time, at least 10 days. It's usually kind of 10 to 45 days is the amount of time. They take beef steak generally, and then they hang it in just above freezing, so it's a refrigerator, but really, really cold. It's just above freezing. It's in a controlled environment. And the reason they do this is because what it does is it does something to the meat. So it improves the flavor of the meat, and it also increases the tenderness of the meat. And so for this, they're buying these cuts of meat, really good cuts of meat. These are steakhouses generally that do that. And then they dry age it. And so therefore, because of this, this is quite a process. These things tend not to be very cheap. Steak's really expensive to begin with.
Yeah, another 30% on top of it.
Oh, yeah, right. So I bring this up to one, educate you. Like, people love steak. I love steak. I love cooking steak. But this is another experience because it's really hard. You can do it at home, but I have never tried it. I don't know. So I generally will sometimes, if I go out to a steak dinner, which I did last week, and fortunately the person that I went with owed me a steak dinner. So I picked this restaurant, which it was awesome. And my steak was dry aged for 40 days. It was a ribeye, and it was just as they said. I mean, the flavor was awesome, and it was very, very tender, which ribeyes can be that way.
And which restaurant was it?
It's called Prime and Provision Steakhouse. It's on 222 North LaSalle in Chicago, and it was awesome. I mean, so the main reason for Ed's Food for Thought today was steak is awesome, and dry-aged steak is awesome as well. And I encourage you to try it if you never have.
Well, I think when my wife and I do our goal setting for this year, starting off the new year, right? Maybe I'll put that on my own.
We have some celebrations. Edge has done well recently. Maybe we can, as couples, go there. Maybe not there, or do something.
You heard it here first.
Yeah.
I mean, do that.
McDonald's is a steakhouse, isn't it?
Sure, we got it. Awesome.
All right, Culver's. We'll do Culver's.
Yep. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for watching. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks. This podcast represents an assessment of the market environment at a specific point in time, should not be relied upon as investment advice, and is not intended to predict or depict performance of any investment. Any specific recommendations or comparisons that are made as to particular securities or strategies are for illustrative purposes only and are not meant as investment advice for any viewer.